Join me this and every Tuesday at 7 to 8:30 p.m. as we discuss various interesting topics and take a look at the current happenings on our island and in our region. Just before you go on your bed, let's touch on the points with your host, Connie JE, right here on Flashpoint Radio. Yes, yes. Welcome to another episode of Just Before You Go Your Bed. Connie JE here with you tonight. It's an interesting topic that we'll be talking about tonight. It's the month of March, and so we are still celebrating women, absolutely celebrating them. And, I want to say shout out to all the women in the islands of the Cayman Islands. Yes, kudos to you for all you do, taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, reaching higher heights. The month of March, we are looking at you and celebrating you for sure. And to all the women in my family, because, it's a lot. And, if I should call out names, we'd have to start at the head. And so Gandolyn Johnson, Beryl Perry, the head women of my family, my mom, Rena Hides, to all my sisters, Anne-Marie, Marlene, Melissa, Drew, Aliyah, I want to say hello to you, to all my cousins, my aunts, my nieces, all of you and all my friends, to all the women of Flashpoint Media. An amazing set of women, so much led by the prestigious, of course, Lady Elise. Amazing work they do, fun, innovative. We celebrate them. And to all of our women listeners and, you who tune in, you like, you subscribe. I have Gemma online as well. So I want to say hi to Gemma. And, thank you for tuning in. She sits by me at work. And a wonderful, wonderful soul. Of course, to my daughter, Avian, tuning in, mothers and daughters, that relationship can be, sometimes shaky. You want them to just be how you want them, that little princess. But then they want to go out and jump in the rain, stomp in those mud hole and then come and take off, the dirty boot in the house. But you have to love them. And what I love about Avian is that she's versatile. Malika Warlord, but yet the princess. So to all you women who, you put on that construction boot and then come Sabbath, come Sunday, so refined in your fascinators and your hats. You are so amazing. Kudos to you for doing, being a woman, being you. So tonight we have 5 women that we will be looking at. We'll be talking about their stories and how they change the status quo. They push the envelope, so to speak. They were innovative. They brought change. They weren't afraid to stand out. They changed the way we do things. And so to all women, I say, we can still and we are still doing it. We are reaching to higher heights. If you have a woman or women that you would like to send a shout out to, put their names in the chat and we will do the shout out for you. So, of course, just before you go to your bed, we're here, we're chilling, we're chatting. Grab your cup of tea, grab your juice, grab your wine. That's the real wine, which is grape juice, so your non-alcoholic wine, please. And grab that, or your din-din, grab your chair, get your phone out, your device, share the link, like and subscribe as well. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to jump on. And I want to say shout out to, as well, Apple Plummy and, Mackie, always tuning in. Listen, so devoted, you right? And so I want to send shout out to her daughters, and her daughter-in-law. I'm sending love here from just before you go to your bed. So if you have a woman or women that you would like to send hello to, shout out to, just drop their name in the chat and we will shout out to them. And of course, if you know of any other woman that have pushed the status quo, drop their name in, a little story, if anything, and and we'll talk about them and see if maybe they are already on my list. If not, we'll talk about them as well. Someone is saying to me, is that Nikki B? Nikki B, is that Nikki B? I'm just looking at my producer to see if that's Nikki B saying good night. And I'm saying good night to you too, if it's Nikki B. All the women of Flashpoint Media. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Remember now, like, subscribe, and share. Don't go anywhere. We're celebrating women. Yes, indeed. The month of March, we have their stories, and I'll tell it for you. Let's chat in a little bit.
How to produce your podcast? Flashpoint Media makes it very easy. We can relieve you of the headache by recording your podcast for you. So, take the first step to getting your content to your desired audience. Contact us here at Flashpoint and your podcast will be live in no time. Our website is www.flashpointmedia.ky or call us at 345-321-6969. That's 345-321-6969.
Welcome back, everyone, to Just Before You Go Your Bed. I have big smiles on my face. Yes, indeed, And month of March, we're celebrating women. We have stories to tell. I have 5 women I'm going to feature. But before I start talking about them, I want to say hello to Pastor Marquino. Mwah! And of course, guess who is tuning in? Amir, I see you. Yes, I do. Big up yourself. I have a story about Amir. And, like when I'm on, we can chat it. Not true, we can chat it. And, we did have some conversation. I go on and ting. For those of you who don't understand the dialect, bear with me. You'll catch on. This is what we do here at Flashpoint Media. We create new words and we teach you how to chat. Yes. So we did have some conversations going on and everything. And me go side with him. And guess what? Nothing more than him goes a book bap and dash me under the bus. So me have him up, but nonetheless he is on. So hello, Mia. Right? Hello, Mia. And I think my aunt is on as well. Is that my aunt? I'm looking at, if I turn my head, I'm looking at my producer. It says, hi, Auntie Mel. So, yes. So I think Marquino is saying, hi, Auntie Mel. And somebody tell me, somebody need to figure out my bed. But you see, this is just before you got your bed. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a few women that push the status quo, celebrating women, and these are their stories. The first woman I want to talk about, pushing the status quo, is Mildred Loving Nee Jeter. So Mildred Loving Jeter. This woman, all because of love, decided to do all that she could do for love. And I think it is a good story to start with, what she did for love. And it is interesting how, what we will do for love. Wouldn't you do anything? Wouldn't you go anywhere? Would you mind being cast in prison for love? Yes, I believe many of us would probably do that. Wouldn't matter the cost of love. So I'll tell you a little bit about this African American history. So Mildred Loving Nee Jeter, Richard and Mildred, they were married for many years. So at 2 a.m., the police burst into her bedroom. She pointed to the marriage certificate on the dresser and said, "He's my husband." The sheriff replied, "That doesn't matter." That woman was Mildred Loving, and the man beside her was Richard Loving. Their crime? Being married. A marriage that Virginia at the time called illegal. You see, Mildred Jeter was 18 years old when she married Richard Loving in 1958. They grew up together in Central Point, Virginia, a rural community where black, white, and native families had long lived side by side. Mildred, of course, was of African American and Native American descent, and Richard, if you can think about it, was white. And indeed, they fell in love like many young people, many young couples do. Even myself, I am falling in love. I will share that with you at a later date. We're celebrating women, so I'll share who I'm falling in love with. Yes? Interesting, and you're gonna like him, so hey. Anyway, so they fell in love, but the Virginia law said their love was a crime. Could you believe it? So the state enforced the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which made it illegal for a white person to marry anyone classified as non-white. Want to keep the thing pure, they were saying. And of course, the penalty, up to 5 years in prison. So Richard and Mildred did what many interracial couples had to do. They drove to Washington, D.C., where interracial marriages was legal. So on June 2nd, 1958, they were married. Then they returned home. The very night they returned home, the police came. So 5 weeks later, on a night in 1958, July 9th, in 1958, the sheriff forced his way into their bedroom. Flashlights, of course, filled the room. They're going to create the big old excitement. Booyah, 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 right? So Mildred pointed to the marriage certificate framed on the dresser and, as I said before, told them calmly, "Richard is my husband." Sheriff Garnet Brooks was the name. Remember that name. And we won't remember the name because of nice things he did. But, everyone takes part when precedents need to be made. So, hey. So he didn't care. Sheriff Garnet Brooks didn't care. To the state of Virginia, the certificate meant nothing, and so they were arrested. Richard spent one night in jail before his family posted bond. Of course, Mildred, pregnant at the time, remained in jail for days. Quite a cruel deal. But in 1959, the Lovings stood before Leon Bazile. The judge sentenced them to 1 year in prison, but he offered them a deal. Now, listen to this deal. Here's the deal. Leave Virginia, your home, and do not return together for 25 years, and the sentence would be suspended. Okay. So, but I saw a little clause in there that I could have jumped on, But I don't know if they saw that, because it says, "Do not return together." Does that mean we could return singularly? I mean, we could have come Sunday and him come Monday. We weren't breaking the law. You said do not return together. But anyway, that's just my mind now jumping on. But here, leave your home. Leave all your family and your friends, uproot up. Yeah? And don't come back here for 25 years. 25 years of exile for the crime of being married, for the crime of being in love, because our colors weren't the same. Of course, back then, they had no choice. They left their home and moved to Washington, D.C. Remember, Washington, D.C. is a place where interracial marriages was legal. So here is life in exile. Of course, coming from Virginia, the nice, quiet countryside, I'm sure the family missed it. Life in the city, I'm sure, was difficult for the Lovings. So they had 3 children, 2 boys, Sidney, Donald, and a girl, Peggy. But under Virginia's ruling, they could not return home together. If they did, they could be sent to prison. Still, they risked secret trips back home whenever they could. But I'm saying, would we have to risk it? It said together, so separately. But anyways, that's me. So a letter that changed history. In 1963, after 5 years of exile, Mildred did something simple but powerful. She wrote a letter. It was addressed to Robert F. Kennedy. She explained their situation plainly. They were legally married in Washington, D.C., but Virginia had jailed them and forced them to leave. She asked, could anything be done? Kennedy forwarded the letter to the American Civil Liberties Union. 2 young lawyers took the case, Bernard Cohen and Philip Herskop. They believed the Loving story could challenge every interracial marriage ban in America. A judge invokes God to defend segregation. Ridiculous. Here's it. In 1965, Judge Belize refused to overturn the conviction. His reasoning shocked many. This is what he wrote. He wrote that God had placed the races on separate continents, and that this separation showed God did not intend the races to mix. Can someone knock on his grave and allow him to see what's happening today? And you know what annoys me the most is that when we come up with these ridiculous ideas and we want to enforce them, we say God. And then persons who these laws and rules are enforced on, they turn around and they hate God when God was not the one who enforced it. God did not put races on different continents and says, hey, I love segregation, don't mix. Come on now. God is the one who made all races. God is an artist. He loves color. So God would never have done that. My people perish because of lack of, you got it, knowledge, okay? But even though he refused to overturn the conviction, the Lovings attorneys refused to stop. They appealed the case again, and eventually it reached the highest court in the country. And this is a case that changed America. Amazing. Loving versus Virginia was argued before the Supreme Court of the United States of America on April 10th, 1967. Richard and Mildred did not attend. It was, it was so sensational. It brought crowds and a lot of newspapers. So they decided to stay home with the children. But Richard gave his lawyers a message to tell the court, and it was simple. Tell the court, I love my wife, and it's just unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia. On June 12, 1967, the court ruled unanimously in their favor. Chief Justice Earl Warren declared that marriage is a fundamental civil right. Civil right. Laws banning interracial marriage violated the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The ruling struck down anti-miscegenation laws in 16 states. Virginia's Racial Integrity Act was done, finished. And this is what Mildred said, I feel free now. So after 9 years of exile, the Lovings returned home to Central Point. Richard built his house. They lived quietly, raising their children. They never tried to be celebrities, but of course, how could they? But love changed the law. And how fitting their name, Loving. Can you imagine? But in 1975, tragedy struck. A drunk driver hit the Loving's car. Richard Loving was killed instantly, and Mildred survived but lost the sight in her right eye. She never remarried, stayed in the home that Richard built, surrounded by family. And Mildred died in 2008 at the age of 68. Love and loving changed the law. Mildred Loving Niejeter and Richard changed what we have today so that it was not against the law anymore to love whomever you wanted to love. Isn't that amazing? But on to this other woman that looked at tragedy in another way. In a way wherein persons may not believe that you deserved, at that time, you didn't deserve to have that compassion, that empathy, wherein we were able to deal with trauma, women's trauma. So I want to talk about this woman, Ann Burgess. Such an amazing woman. So the FBI had boxes of serial killer confessions they couldn't use until a 42-year-old nurse walked in and asked one question that changed everything. Tell me about the women they killed. 1975, Virginia. Again, Virginia is famous, yeah? So FBI agents Robert Ressler and John Douglas had been driving across America for months, sitting in prison cells, recording interviews with the most violent criminals in the country. They had hours of tape, detailed confessions, direct access to the minds of serial killers, and absolutely no idea what to do with it. And Burgess listened to the first recording and delivered the verdict that would reshape criminal investigation forever. This isn't research. This is just stories. The agents, of course, stared at her because, what are you talking about? We're the experts here. But anyway, she asked, you're asking them to talk about themselves, but you're not collecting data. You're not following methodology. You can't compare one interview to another because every conversation is different. With that statement, there was silence. You're sitting on something extraordinary, she said, but the way you're doing this is scientifically worthless. And she was right. Ann Burgess hadn't planned to revolutionize criminal justice. I mean, she was a psychiatric nursing professor at Boston College. No idea that the statement she said would revolutionize the way we do things. And of course, a researcher studying trauma and a mother of three. The FBI found her because of a groundbreaking paper she published in 1974 about rape trauma, proving that sexual assault caused lasting psychological damage at a time when courts barely recognized it. So women were raped not once, not twice, but over and over, and for some, their lifetime. Because no one recognized the trauma that this thing brought. And so, of course, she was invited to do a lecture on rape victims, and she ended up redesigning how the FBI investigates violent crime. The problem was obvious once she pointed it out. The behavioral science unit was brilliant but chaotic. They believed you could profile unknown offenders by studying crime patterns. Revolutionary for the 1970s, when most law enforcement consider it, unnecessary, untouched, unreached. But their serial killer interviews were narrative chaos. The killers they performed. They told shocking stories designed to control the conversation. They fed the agents exactly what they wanted to hear, glorified confessions about their own brilliance. Oh, I did this, this is how it was done, and stories that would just shock you, shake you. And of course, the agents, mesmerized by access to these infamous minds, had missed the most important part of their crime: the victims. Burgess asked a question that changed everything. Tell me about the women they killed. And of course, the agents, they looked confused. Who were they? How old? Where did the offenders find them? What were they doing when approached? What did the killer say to convince them? How did he gain control? We asked about that. She interrupted them. No, you asked the killers to describe their victims. That tells you about the killer's fantasy. So now here she's breaking it down. Don't just get the sensational story. Start to ask them why. What triggered you? What interested you? How did you gain power? Let them tell you who were these women, because these women were actual human beings. And thus it started. Thus it came about. Ann Burgess revolutionized criminal justice. The way we approach serial killers, the way we approach killers on a whole, trying to find out what triggered you really. And one of the big cases that she did that I could remember is the Menendez brothers that killed their parents. And, with her study and interviewing them and talking with them, she was brought in by the prosecution. But after speaking with the brothers, and her strategy was, draw the scene for me. Instead of just looking at me and telling me the story while you're talking, draw the scene for me. And the brothers did. And one thing that came out unanimously from both of them was, and which was quite weird to her, was that they kept drawing areas of the bedroom. Whenever asked about their father, they would draw him big. He was always tall and big and in the bedroom. And from that, she could decipher that they were molested. And so she changed positions. She did not testify on behalf of the prosecution, but she testified for the defense. And as you know, when she did that, they had a hung jury and had to do over. And the judge didn't want her to come back on the second go because of how she affected the jury with her testimonies. And so from there, when she found out that she had such an impact on the way jurors saw victims, then she has lent her skills there. She's still teaching in Boston College, still publishing, still consulting, and we say kudos to her. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll talk about a few more women who push the status quo, their stories, how they changed lives, how they've impacted lives, how they've opened the doors so other women can see their way out, see a wider path, not with a visor on, but an avenue that's open to greatness. Celebrating women. We'll be right back. Just Before You Go Your Bed continues.
Join us for an unforgettable evening of praise and worship. Clifton Hunter High School presents One Voice, One Praise, happening on Saturday, March 28, 2026 at 6 p.m. at the Clifton Hunter High School Performance Hall. Come and experience powerful performances by students, teachers, churches in the community, special guest visitors. Adults $10, children $5. All proceeds go towards supporting the Key Club and Spanish Venture. Don't miss this uplifting night of worship, unity, and inspiration. See you there.
Yes, welcome back to Just Before You Go Your Bed. We're talking about women, celebrating them this month of March, and talking about some women that were phenomenal years ago, women who changed and revolutionized the way we look and do things. And for women in our today's society, you are doing the same. Kudos to you for that. Yes, indeed. So we talked about Mildred Loving, lovingly changing the way the law looked at segregation and interracial marriage. We talked about Ann Burgess and how she revolutionized the criminal justice system, the way we looked at victims, women victims, victims on a whole, but also looking at women and how trauma changed them psychologically. Now we want to talk about Elizabeth Ware Packard. Yes, born in Massachusetts. I tell you, this woman is phenomenal. She was the oldest of three children and the only daughter of Samuel and Lucy Ware. And so at the insistence of her parents, she was married to a Calvinist minister, Theophilus Packard, 14 years her senior, and said to be cold and domineering. They got married on the 21st of May, 1839. Now, the couple had 6 children, and they lived in Western Massachusetts until 1854. They lived in, they also went on to live in Ohio and Iowa for short periods in the beginning of 1857. And then, of course, the family then moved to Illinois and appeared to have had a peaceful and uneventful marriage. But it gets here quite eventful. So Theophilus, however, had quite decisive religious beliefs. After many years of marriage, Elizabeth outwardly questioned her husband's belief and began expressing her opinions that were contrary to his. And so while the main subject of their dispute was religion, the couple also disagreed on methods of child rearing and managing family finances, and as well as the morality of slavery, which Elizabeth, she defended known abolitionist John Brown, which embarrassed Theophilus greatly. So in Illinois, it opened its first hospital for the mentally ill in 1851. And the state legislature had to pass a law within 2 years of its opening that you required a public hearing before a person could be committed. So all along, since its opening in 1851, you could just commit people. No hearing, no questions asked, just dash them in there. But here's the funny thing, right? So the law was passed and it was amended that you required a public hearing before a person could be committed against their will, with the exception that a husband could have his wife committed without either a public hearing or her consent. So so that shaped me a little bit, Because when I think about me, me have mouth. Me talk a lot, sis. You see, it's me. So, if I said, me tell you something, God is so good. Because I don't know what happened to me if I did bad at any time there. Have mercy. Because my husband surely would have committed me to the mental ward. Can you imagine? So the law was husband could have just go so boom and dash them wife in a mental hospital because she did not agree with him. Can you something? Let us move on because I'm telling wait, hold on. Wait with me. Allow me to drink a little tip of water. I'm told when I'm triggered, I need to drink water. And that just triggered me just now. So in 1860, Theophilus Packard judged that his wife was slightly insane, a condition he attributed to excessive application of body and mind. So she was slightly insane. So he arranged for a doctor, J.W. Brown. And we are only remembering him because he was a part of the checkered board that changed history. So the husband, connived with the doctor to speak with her. So the doctor now comes in. He pretends to be a sewing machine salesman So, of course, bringing up conversations and manipulatively. During their conversation, Elizabeth complained of her husband's domination and his accusations of her to others that she was insane. And so Theophilus decided to have Elizabeth committed. And she only learned of this decision on June 18, 1860, when the county sheriff arrived at the Packard's home to take her into custody. So Elizabeth spent the next 3 years at the Jacksonville Insane Asylum in Jacksonville, Illinois, now the Jacksonville Development Center. She was regularly questioned, of course, by doctors wanting her to admit that she was insane, but she refused. So 3 years later, in June, due in part to pressure from her children who wished to have her released, the doctors declared, they declared that she was incurable and discharged her. She was incurable because she was slightly, as her husband said, insane, and now they couldn't cure her because, body and mind working together, pushing the status quo, disagreeing with your point because it made no sense, or she had an opinion and she voiced that she was insane, and so she was declared incurable. So upon her discharge, of course, husband takes charge again, locks her in the nursery of their home, and nailed the windows shut. You know what happened? Elizabeth managed to drop a letter complaining of the treatment, her husband's treatment of her through the window, which was delivered to her friend Sarah Hazlitt. Thank you so much, Sarah Hazlitt's family. We say thanks to you on her behalf. Now, Sarah in turn delivered the letter to Judge Charles Starr, who issued a writ of habeas corpus ordering Theophilus to bring Elizabeth to his chambers to discuss the matter, because he wanted to find out, was this woman really insane? So after being presented with Theophilus' evidence, Judge Starr scheduled a jury trial to allow a legal determination of Elizabeth's sanity. So here we have the case, Packard versus Packard. At the subsequent trial of Packard versus Packard, which lasted 5 whole days, Theophilus' lawyers produced witnesses from his family who testified that Elizabeth had argued with her husband and tried to withdraw from his congregation. Albeit this was because she was insane, not her feelings, no rights to her opinion. So these witnesses concurred with Theophilus that this was a sign of insanity. Thank God. The laws have changed indeed. So the record from Illinois State Hospital stated that Miss Packard's condition was incurable, and of course this record was also entered into court. Anyway, Elizabeth's lawyers, Stephen Moore and John Orr, responded by calling witnesses from the neighborhood who knew the Packards but were not members of Theophilus's church. Again, you see, using God to restrain so that persons won't understand that God is a God of love. He wouldn't do this. Absolutely not. You are not insane for having an opinion. God gave you a brain. So now these witnesses testified they never saw Elizabeth exhibit any signs of insanity while discussing religion or otherwise. The final witness was Dr. Duncanson, who was both a physician and a theologian. And he interviewed Elizabeth, and he testified that while not necessarily in agreement with all her religious beliefs, she was sane in his view, arguing that I do not call people insane because they differ with me. Thank you so much, Dr. Duncanson, for setting that record straight back then. A platform we totally agree with, right? I pronounce her a sane woman and wish we had a nation of such women. If only you could see our women now, Dr. Duncanson, you'd be so proud and quite overwhelmed. Yes, indeed. So, of course, the jury deliberated for only 7 minutes. See that number 7? It's an amazing number. God's number. Good number. Good up. We are good up number. So they deliberated only 7 minutes before deciding the case in Elizabeth's favor. Your husband is ridiculous. He actually, now this is my verdict, your husband is literally insane. He now needed to go to the mental hospital. Anyways, so they decided the case in Elizabeth's favor. She was legally declared sane, and Judge Charles Starr, who had changed the trial from one about habeas corpus to one about sanity, issued an order that she should not be confined. Imagine that. Only because I don't agree with you, I am now titled insane. But Packard versus Packard brought the issue before the land, and persons saw and recognized that the laws needed to be changed, that husbands did not have a right without a person's consent, without a public hearing, without proper evidence, not because I disagreed with you that they had to be placed in a mental institution. We're so glad that that law has changed. Have a few comments online. I'm going to read through and see. I want to say thank you so much to everyone that is tuning in. We have my aunt, Merle. She's online saying good evening. So we say good evening to you too. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's so amazing how many persons, all the women, that are in my life and the men that support them too and support us, they are online. Amir, Pastor Marquino, all of you. So amazing. And thank you so much for tuning in. And then I want to talk to you and tell you the story. This one is quite interesting. I love it. These women, their stories, it fascinates me so much. So I have BK, our manager from work, BK. She says, I'm here too. So amazing. Thank you so much for joining in. Big up on the self. I can see far distances. I can't see there. Okay, so I gotta put my glasses on. So this woman I want to talk about is Carolyn Elizabeth Sarah Norton, or Lady Sterling Maxwell Nee Sheridan. Yes, this woman is fantastic. Caroline Elizabeth. So she was born in March 1808 and died the 15th of June 1877. So she was an active English social reformer and author. And she did something unprecedented. She left her husband. Who've ever heard of that? Because back in the day, you need your man. You had no rights to your earnings, no rights to your savings. And if you did work, all of that went to your husband. He could claim it, yeah? So she left her husband, who was accused by many of coercive behavior in 1836. Her husband then sued her close friend, Lord Melbourne, then the Wing Prime Minister, for criminal conversation. And here is a fun fact. Criminal conversation is known as adultery. So now we say adultery, we say cheating, all of that. It is known back then as criminal conversation. I think I like that term still for the adultery, you know what? Just set you straight, make you know exactly what adultery is. Criminal conversation. So to all those who are having criminal conversation, look what happens. Although the jury found her friend not guilty of criminal conversation, adultery, she failed to gain a divorce and was denied access to her 3 sons due to the laws at the time which favored fathers. So she left him, she applied for a divorce. He claims that she was having criminal conversation with Lord Melbourne and the Wing Prime Minister. They went to court. Court says, I don't find you guilty of adultery, but I will not give you a divorce. And because of the laws of the land, her husband enforce not allowing her access to their 3 children. I keep saying 3 children. So Norton campaign led to the passage. Listen, Norton's campaign, so Caroline's campaigning, led to the passage of the Custody of Infants Act 1839, the Matrimonial Causes Act 1857, and the Married Women's Property Act 1870. And I implore you all to take a look at these acts and see what they says, yeah? So here she comes. In 1827, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her life. She marries George, marries this man, yeah? He's a barrister, member of Parliament for Guildford, and the younger brother of Lord Grantley. So he's coming from a prestigious family line. But George was a jealous and possessive husband given to violent fits of drunkenness. The union quickly proved unhappy due to his mental and physical abuse. To make matters worse, George was unsuccessful as a barrister, and the couple fought bitterly over money. Now, here's one person that needed to be committed, even without his consent, though that's against the law. You should have your consent. But he should have a public hearing and sent to a mental institution. Well, during her early married years, Caroline did this. She used her beauty, wit, and political ties to set herself up as a major society hostess. Her unorthodox behavior and candid conversation raised many eyebrows in the 19th century English high society, which made enemies and admirers almost equal at equal measure. So she had leveled off enemies and admirers. So despite George's jealousy and pride, he encouraged his wife to use her ties to advance his career. It was through her influence that in 1831, he was made a Metropolitan Police magistrate, and during these years, Caroline turned to prose and poetry as means of releasing her inner emotions and earning money. Her first book, you can look it up, The Sorrows of Rosalie, 1829, and it was well received. The other in 1830, The Undying One, a romance founded on the legend of the Wandering Jew, and of course that followed suit. From 1832 to 1837, she edited the Court magazine. In 1836, Caroline, as we said before, left her husband. She managed to subsist on her earnings as an author. But listen, but George claimed these as his, arguing this successfully in court. The court agreed that her books, her writings, all her earnings were his. Okay. So she was paid and given no spousal support. So paid nothing by her husband and her earnings confiscated. Norton used the law to her own advantage, running up bills. And I love this. I love this. This is a good strategy. Running up bills in her husband's name. She told the creditors when they came to collect that if they wish to be paid, they could sue her husband. And I totally agree. Double thumbs up on that. You've confiscated my money. Royalties are coming in. You're pocketing them. I'm spending it. And since I have no authority, I ordered them in your name. Ooh, kudos. Good job. Good job. So, not long after their separation, George abducted their sons, hiding them with relatives in Scotland and later in Yorkshire, refusing to tell Caroline their whereabouts. George accused Caroline of involvement in an ongoing affair with her close friend. We were talking about Lord Melbourne years ago, criminal conversation. And then the Wink Prime Minister. So initially, George demanded £10,000 from Lord Melbourne. Maybe £10,000 would probably be like, no, maybe $350,000. Yeah. But Melbourne refused to be blackmailed. And so George instead took the Prime Minister to court. So he couldn't get any money from Lord Melbourne, was trying to blackmail him. That didn't work.